Hey, listeners, are you getting inspired to dive deeper into your learning of EFFT? If so, head on over to Catherine's website to check out her list of upcoming trainings. Some trainings are focused on combining EFFT with young kids and EFFT play therapy. So head on over to her website and we hope to see you in the future. Check it out at KATHRYNDEBRUIN.com, CatherineDeBruin.com, and we hope to see you in the future.
Welcome to the Family Express podcast, where our destination is resilient and connected families. Come aboard with your hosts, marriage and family therapists Catherine DeBruin and Rhonda Evans, to explore the world of emotionally focused family therapy, a model developed by Sue Johnson and colleagues. Together with our guest speakers, our travels will map the EFFT landscape, highlighting lessons learned, shared fears, and the passion and curiosity that bonds our community.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Family Express podcast with Catherine and Rhonda. We have a very special guest for you all today, and her name is Clair Mellenthin out of Utah. And Claire, we're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Claire is a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapist supervisor. And perhaps as no surprise, we're going to talk about EFFT, play therapy, and working with kids and teens into the family therapy process. And we're so happy to have such an expert in the field joining us today. And so, Claire, we like to kind of start with guests giving a little overview of what brought you into family therapy and play therapy, just kind of get a chance to get to know you and your journey.
I love talking about this. So my journey, began really in my college years. I think for most of us, I originally thought I was going to be like a criminal profiler. I loved murder mysteries. I loved like Patricia Cornwell. I am a child of the 80s and 90s. So, way back when. And as part of my psychology degree, I had to take a child psychology class. And all of a sudden, I entered into like this whole new world that I had not even considered before. Because part of the classes, you had to do an internship working with children in some capacity in psychology. So I was able to secure an internship with a place called the Children's Center. And that is an organization that works with kids like littles, like 2 to 7-year-olds. And up until that point, I hadn't ever even conceptualized that little bodies and little brains could experience trauma, could experience all the things that, these behavioral and emotional and mental health challenges that we know that young children do experience and can experience. And this was my first introduction into that, as well as watching how play was one of the huge healing forces in these children's lives. And looking at how the teachers were utilizing play and, as a paraprofessional, as a student being taught how to engage and connect through play and why this mattered. And that really began to kind of shift my lens and also like where my passion and like what really started sparking interest in my world. And so I shifted, and now knowing myself, I'd be a terrible criminal profiler. But really, like, it shifted everything for me. And so I, went on to become in social work, and my internships in social work were, again, all working with really young children and using play therapy. And I didn't know that's what I was doing until graduate school, when I had some beautiful mentors who, kind of threw me in with baptism by fire and then began to teach me why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I'm doing what I'm doing. And I began to see for the first time how play became that vehicle for healing and for connection and for communication and for repair to happen. And so, I've been so lucky in my life to have these influences and to have good mentors in my life. I think that's like such another key part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing the start of your journey there, Claire. And I was lucky enough to go to one of your trainings recently in Salt Lake City. And for our listeners, if you don't know, Claire has authored a number of books. One of them is called Attachment Centered Play Therapy. And I went up to listen to you speak about that at a play therapy workshop. And one of the things when you teach so beautifully, Claire, I love the way that you can make concepts clear, but it's very experientially done. And you're very inspirational when you speak. It's evident when you speak that you're talking from the heart when you're teaching. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean that. And as you were speaking, you said, and you put it up on the slide too, you said that play is a need. It's absolutely a need. And I've been thinking about that ever since. And I've been thinking, well, what kind of a need is it? Because this is not on our list of needs in the EFT model, interestingly enough. So is play, as far as I know, is it an attachment need? Is it a human need? Is it physiological? I mean, we know play can affect you cognitively, spiritually, on so many different levels. So what is play? And why do you consider it a need? And speak to that a little bit.
So we know that play is a physiological need, right? For optimal development across the lifespan. Like, so starting from our very early beginnings to the sunset years of life, right? So a child's whole development, their neurological, physiological, cognitive, emotional, social, moral judgment, like all of these forces in child development are influenced by attachment, relationship, and within that is play. And so a child learns like their whole like early physiological like self of development, let alone the internal self development. This happens through play. So when you have somebody that's playing with the little piggies on your toes and squishing your squishy little thunder thighs and, just delighting in you, that begins to create, as we know, that internal working model of self, right? That idea that I am loved and lovable and worthy of love and belonging. And it's through these interactions, right, where a child also begins to feel that definition of self, right? That physical self. So when you wiggle my toes, those toes belong to me. When you're like, peekaboo, right? We know that that is teaching object permanence as well as important attachment messages of I may be gone, I'm coming back. You may not see me, I'm still here. And a child's fine and gross motor skills is developed through play, right? So that game of like picking up a Cheerio and dropping it off the high chair and smishing your food all over the place, right? All these fine and gross motor skills are developed through play. So that's why in your pediatrician's office, when you're doing like your milestones, the questions are, can they jump? Can they run? Can they skip? Can they throw a ball? Can they tie a shoe? Right? Like this is all these important, crucial milestones happens through reciprocal relationships, as well as inherently through play, because play is a child's natural language. And this is how they make sense of the world around them. So instead of talking it out, they play it out. So if you've ever watched a kid or a group of kids play house or play doctor or play school, they are playing out all of these relationships and these experiences of relationships in their world. You hope as a parent that they catch on your, good language and not your not so naughty language, that we all slip out. But they capture everything, right? And what they're exposed to, they're going to play it. They're going to play through it. And so across our lifespan, play is inherently crucial for our whole being development. And then when we think about the end of life services, right? Like if you're put into a care center that's sterile and devoid of connection and community, and you're left to, by yourself, and maybe your basic needs are being met, but none of your relational needs are met, we know that that significantly impacts physical and physiological and mental health. Those same cohort and that same group of people who are put into a care center where there's music and engagement and creativity and moments of connection, right? We know that their health, overall health inside and out, also improves. And even in care centers where you're in memory care centers, for example, and maybe you're on a locked ward and maybe you don't remember who you are, right? Or who your loved ones are. We know through the power of connection and music and play and expressive therapies, people connect back into themselves and they remember, even if it's just for a brief moment in time. And so this is why I wholeheartedly believe that play is a human need. And and that goes hand in hand with what happens through play is connection with others, right? And so it is absolutely an attachment need. We were talking about, prior to our recording is, one of the things I love to ask people in my trainings is what happens in our adult romantic relationships when we stop playing. And the affect shift in the audience is immediate. It's like, oh, I'm like, oh, yeah, that relationship is in trouble. Because we've stopped finding those moments of delight and connection and spontaneity with each other. Our play may look different, right? Most of us as adults are not sitting down and having tea parties, like imaginary tea parties together. But we find ways where we can play and be free and just be in the moment. And that is what keeps our relationships and connection alive.
Gosh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're
So
welcome.
play as an attachment need. And so I try to fit that into the attachment model. And then I think of Bowlby talking about that attachment relationships there's a caregiving system, there's a sexual system, there's an exploratory system, and there's an attachment need system. And in the exploratory system, I'm sure play would fit into that, very obviously. The sexual system, there's play that fits into that as well. I mean, the caregiving system, you can very much be playful. And actually, a lot of when I'm in attachment distress and I go to my husband, he's very humorous. And so one of the natural ways that he'll get me feeling better, I mean, he can definitely attune as well. He's been taught well over the years. But he can also sort of break the ice and crack a joke and get me laughing, which pulls me right out, of the moment that I'm having. And so, yeah.
It brings back in safety, a sense of safety of, oh, you're here with me.
It brings you back into that present moment, doesn't it? When you're laughing together and you're sharing that moment together.
Yeah. And there's a whole neurobiological process, as we know, in contemporary attachment science that's happening where our brains are just linking into each other of like, I'm safe, you're safe. You're here, I'm here. And we're having these huge rewards, being just gushed into our brains and our hearts and our beings when we have those moments of connection and delight together.
So these moments of connection and delight, do you try to make these happen then between you and the family or between family members? Or like, how do you see this translating over into family sessions?
Absolutely. And I do bring in a lot of humor into my work, but I also bring in a lot of play because I think oftentimes when parents are coming in, when families are coming in, they've already tried everything they know how to do. And most of the time, the caregivers are exhausted and burned out and scared and feel helpless and frustrated. And it's not uncommon. And I've been there myself as a parent, when you get to that place where you're like, I love this kid. And right now, I can't stand them. I don't like them. I don't like who I become with them. Like my whole identity and who I thought I was going to be as a parent has been shattered. It's so hard. And I think it's such a vulnerable experience to ask somebody for help and to come into our door, knock on our doors and come through our thresholds and say, can you help me? Because I don't know what else to do. And with that is also a lot of shame that comes into that, because for a lot of parents, they've done everything they know how to do and it's not getting better. And so that attachment injury can also come very quickly in of my parenting's not good enough. My love's not good enough. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe they'd be better off without me. Maybe, right? Like it can go into that core attachment model, internal working model of self so quickly and so deeply because you have done everything you know how to do. And so if we like meet that place without some joy, without figuring out how to connect and bring in some play and some moments of delight where they can find each other again outside of whatever it is that brought them into our offices, I find that not only the buy-in happens much sooner for everybody, but it doesn't have to be so scary and so hard to come to therapy too.
I really love the picture that you're painting because it's so true. I think that people can sometimes deliberate on going to therapy for even up to 2 years before they make that phone call and make it through your office doors. And then especially for parents feeling so vulnerable and shamed about here's the most important thing to me. Here are my children and I'm walking them into your hands. And so if we come into that sort of too seriously or too focused almost or too ready to take over, too much the expert thinking that we can do it differently, it can really intensify the parent shame. And so just building that relationship with the family. In fact, very often I have parents come in first, especially if there are young children involved. But even just seeing them as a full family for a first session and just joining them in a playful, relational way can help soften that shame a little bit.
It does. And I think it also helps them to remember, like, oh, yeah, I kind of actually do like you. Like when things have been so hard for so long, I think that bringing in play and expressive therapies helps them like get through the mud and see each other again instead of having that overwhelming hurt and anger and frustration and fear driving the show. And even if it's just for a brief moment, right? It's like, oh, there you are. And you can get into that, even if it's just for a second, right? Like that starts to create some building blocks where healing can start growing again.
So as you're sitting with a family as the therapist and you're looking at them with fresh eyes, with curious eyes, and you're appreciating each of them and you're reflecting and commenting on how they come across, that can already sort of encourage parents because someone else is delighting in their family. Someone else is delighting in their child and seeing an aspect of them.
Yeah. In my intake with parents, my last question that I love to ask them is, what do they love most about their kid? And I think that can start even just reframing who their child is in their eyes, helping them remember that.
Yeah.
And I like to end that parent consult with that question so that they remember that part. Because when you've been struggling for so long and it's been so hard, like sometimes we forget. I mean, sometimes, or it's like we know, but the problems feel so big and the fear is so big. And like, I'm like, there is nothing worse as a parent than when your baby's hurting. It doesn't matter if they're 2 or 22 or 62, right? Like there is not a worse feeling.
Especially when you don't know what to do about it, right? When you don't know, when you want to comfort and tend, but it's not working.
Right. And when that hurt overtaken the system and it's built into now resentment and frustration and fear, like, it's big.
And so speaking to attachment though, like what helps the parent, like you said, it's in there. They do feel like that about their child, but now they're sitting with a therapist who's slowing down, taking time, co-regulating with them, and then structurally walking them back to this question, which allows them to have a space to breathe and think back and get back in touch with those beautiful memories. A client actually taught me this lesson many years ago when I was starting out as an intern in a private practice, and I really needed to build a client load, and I hardly had any clients, and I was making no money. And I was on an intake call with a new family, just so hoping that they would pick me, to come and do the treatment. And they actually did. And somehow at the end of therapy, I said to the mom, well, what made you decide to work with me? She said, Catherine, I interviewed a lot of people, but you're the only person who on the intake call said to me, oh, well, just tell me about your child. Who is she? How do you see her? And she said, just that human question and your interest made me feel like you wanted to get to know her. And that's why I picked you. And I never, ever forgot that. It also makes me think a little bit about child-centered play therapy, which I think you're familiar with the
Mhm.
model too. Actually, the filial model, where they, in the first group, when you bring together various parents to learn how to do play therapy with their children, one of the instructions is bring me a photo of your favorite photo of your child. And then inevitably the parents will bring in like infant photos if they had their child as an infant. And the exercise is like, show your child, talk about them as the baby. And then obviously the meta message is, how can we get back to you seeing your child in this way and having the feelings that you have about them now when you see this baby pic?
Oh, I love that.
That's one of
Yeah.
my son's favorite activities, you two.
Say that again, Rhonda.
That's one of Isaac's favorite activities is he loves to, so, he has the iPad.
Listeners, check out our book for children of any age. It's called A Jumble of Thoughts and a Tangle of Feelings. It's on Amazon.com. If you know a child out there who is having a tough time, but unable to put that distress into words, this book is your guide to helping them figure out what is going on. Whether you're an educator, a therapist, or a parent, we really think this will be a helpful guide for you.
And the iPad, like, just kind of suggests photos like every day. And there's always photos of him. And so his favorite activity is like the new photo of the day that pops up on the iPad. And then he comes over and he sits next to me and he wants to look at the photo together. And I tell him what's happening in the photo. Where are we? What are we celebrating? And then he's just like, he loves telling stories about himself. Like, he just delights in me talking about him. And it's just one of his favorite activities to do.
Well, it helps him to start developing a coherent sense of his story, right? And how much he's loved and all the funny, cute things that you love about him. Like like children just love that. They melt into that. And I really love the book by Jamie Lee Curtis. She wrote a book several years ago and it's about adoption, but it's what is it? Tell me the story of the night I was born or something along those lines. And it's exactly this of the parent, the adopted parent showing her and telling this little girl all the stories that she knows about her. And the night that she was born, and this is who she was, this is how they came to their house. This is, and it's just such a beautiful, I think, example of that too, of how important this is in every family, right? And when we're working and with kids who maybe don't have those baby pictures for one reason or another, I think that that's where it's so important that we create these coherent narratives also with them as much as we can. But my guess is your little one is just melting into you, like you're melting into him simultaneously.
Oh yeah, it's totally reciprocal. I have tracked it. Like he does it almost every day, every other day. He wants to sit down and look at the photos together and hear the story about them.
I think we're so lucky to be in our world right now of technology for that reason, that there's so many pictures and it's so easy to see them come up. And then our kids also have all the little videos of when they were young. And it makes me think about stage 3 of EFFT, where we want to create rituals and consolidate these processes for families. And that's such a beautiful ritual to be able to do together, to I know that our grandparents have got one of these iPads like in their kitchen, and there's a constant rolling images and videos of the children. But so many ways now to have families go back and revisit these moments together.
And I think that that's like, I love that that exercise is being used in filial therapy. And I think that that's also such a beautiful thing to bring into our attachment work, whatever model of attachment theory and attachment model that you're bringing in, you know. And if they don't have one of the things is I help them to, like, I help them help, guide them in creating one together of, and you can do this with so many different experiential or expressive ways of how to do this.
I'm listening. What are your ideas? I want to know.
So, you can have them do sand tray of, remember, or, think of what it would feel like, or do you remember the last time you felt really happy together? And let's create a world that represents that. So you're using like the symbolism in that. You can have them, from Satir's work of bringing in clay, and Violet Oaklander had some beautiful interventions about this as well, but where they can sculpt either an actual representation of that or how it felt, what they remember. And I think it's like especially people who get stuck in like the black and white of what it was versus what it feels like. I think that that's where bringing in some of the expressive work can be so powerful around that, because that helps them get into the heart instead of staying in the upstairs and the cognitive piece. Because what we want to do is connect heart and brain, in that. And I also have had them like create a mural together, like with like a big piece of like butcher paper, and where everybody has space to create. They're creating a coherent picture, but they all have their own space to put their work in it and what that looks like and feels like. And so, I mean, and you can also do this with puppet shows, like so simply, like having them, and I make teenagers do puppet shows, by the way. They love it. And totally get me like, look, like, are you serious? You're so weird. Like, what is wrong with you? But in that, I mean, I just embrace it. Like, I know I'm so ridiculous, but it also brings in, it's so silly and so outside of what they would typically do and so ridiculous, right? But it makes them laugh. And again, that's going to lower the defenses, bring these moments of connection, even if their moment of connection is, Claire is such a weirdo. Like, why do you make me come to this weird lady? Like, what is going on? They're connecting in this, it's kind of like if my kids, like they're connecting and ganging up on me and making fun of me. I'm like, great, I'll take it. You guys are connecting. Like,
Yeah.
Like, it's the same concept, just bringing it into the therapy room where, again, if we're bringing in playfulness and joy, connection is going to follow.
And you're going to see from an assessment perspective, do they have these moments? Can they have these moments? Can I help facilitate a moment like this? I can also ask questions about how do you play together? What are some rituals like? It's making me inspired. We're actually moving out of our home of 12 years this coming Sunday. And I've got a family with 3 kids, and I've been thinking about how do we say goodbye to this house? That this is all, 2 of the children, this is all they've ever known. Wow. And I know feeling sad as we're packing up. And so I said to them yesterday, let's all start thinking about some of our most memorable stories. The story of the time that we saw the snake over here, and the story of the time we played with the blue balloon. And so we're all starting to kind of collect these stories as a way to say goodbye. So it sounds like, I mean, here we're saying like play is so much a part of a first session, connecting,
every
bonding,
session.
assessing, definitely part of late stage treatment. And you're saying every single session in between.
Yeah, I really believe that. And, as you were saying that, do you remember the Kissing Hand book, The Little Raccoons?
Yeah.
They do have a book about saying goodbye to their home.
Do they?
Yes.
The same author?
So beautiful. Yeah, it's the same characters too with the little raccoon family. They have to leave their home.
Okay.
And so exactly what you're talking about, but it's like in the book of like creating like these rituals to remember and ways to carry the memories with them. And it's a darling, darling book.
I'm going to look it up. So right now I've got Jamie Lee Curtis's book, Tell Me Again About the Night I Was Born.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and try find the other one too.
I'm like, just my random, oh, here, there's a book for this.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it.
My husband often laughs at me and he's like, you don't remember what you were going to do like 2 minutes ago, but you can recall like the most random things, like where it's like, oh, I remember this, or here's a resource for this, or here's this. And
so there's a whole Kissing Hand series. And are you referring to A Kiss Goodbye?
Yep, I think so.
Oh, I did not know about that. And there's an Almost Perfect Sleepover. Yay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that like, I do love bringing in books, and I like bringing in children's books, even with my work with adults and teenagers. So it's not just for little kids, because what happens is like, this is one of the therapeutic powers of play. Let me talk to you about this. But in being able to like see yourself in a story, it sometimes can create words and connection that our regular selves don't necessarily have words for. And I really love bringing in picture books when I'm working with couples, when I'm working with big kids, when I'm working with adults, because there's also that we're so socialized out of vulnerability and intimacy and these younger parts of self that are there in all of us. But again, it allows you to see yourself in the story, which can bring in words for your own experience. So like several months ago, it was so funny. I was working with a teenager and she was struggling with some things, but there is Brian Katie's book that she did years ago. What is it? Why am I blanking on her name of her book? Loving What Is. She adapted her work for a children's book called Tiger, Tiger, Is It True? About kind of like our cognitive dissonance and how we like make assumptions and we create these whole stories. And, Brene Brown calls them our first drafts, right? But they usually probably shouldn't have said that on a podcast, but they usually like that colors the way that we're seeing our relationships and our world as the stories that we tell ourselves. And so I pulled out this children's book working with a parent and their teenage daughter. And I'm like, all right, guys, I'm going to read you a story. Tiger, Tiger, Is True? Because they were so caught up in their first drafts of what they were assuming and believing and feeling and experiencing that it was really impacting the relationship together. And so, talking about how we can begin figuring out like what part is mine, what part is yours, kind of that work. And so it was so funny because several weeks later, this is like probably a couple months later, we were talking about something completely unrelated. And the teenager was like, Tiger, Tiger, is it true? To the mom. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even like recognize. I was like falling back into that dance of what we were doing. And they had kept that story and then used that phrase together when they started getting stuck in their first drafts, that idea of, and Sue Johnson is much more eloquent when she talks about our tangos and our dance patterns that we fall into because it's what's comfortable and what's known. And as we're making changes and shifting away from what's comfortable, learning a new dance is really, really hard. And this can again bring in some of that playfulness and talking about hard things, exploring and processing hard things, but in a way that doesn't feel as psychologically threatening.
Yeah.
Because a story about a cute little tiger cub and a turtle, instead of me and you.
Oh my gosh, Claire, so touching. And I'm ordering all of these books. Thank you speaking about Sue right there. And I guess for our listeners who are learning EFFT, what we're not saying here is that you're going to go in and do all this teaching and take over the parent's role. And it's not all about psychoeducation. What we are talking about is introducing some bibliotherapy and some play, but always with the goal of accessing that caregiving system to be able to understand who their children are, to be able to meet them at the right developmental level, in order to get through to them and to recognize these negative patterns that they all get involved in. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, Sue and I actually had a really beautiful conversation shortly before she passed away last year about this. And
we would love to hear a little bit about that if you could share.
Yeah, we did a co-keynote together for the Attachment Summit through PESI. And Sue's work has been just so foundational in my understanding of attachment and looking at it and understanding it in contemporary lenses, and every time you have a conversation with Sue Johnson, I mean, you come away a better person, and you also feel so nurtured and caretaken of, right? Like, oh, I just want you to be my grandma. Just hold me. But we were talking about how important this role of caregiving and nurture and attunement happens, and bringing in the playfulness of the home, and helping them find themselves in their stories again. Sue has, I just do a little PESI plug for people, but Dr. Johnson has put, before she passed away, has put all of her trainings on the PESI website, and was really instrumental in building like the attachment science component to what their continuing education things are. And so through that's where we were able to, really build some beautiful courses.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful, Claire. And Sue's model, emotionally focused family therapy, and then your attachment centered family therapy, play therapy.
Play therapy.
How do the two go together? Do they go hand in hand? Are there any differences you're aware of? What do you think about that?
So yes, they can be integrated so easily and beautifully together. And it's kind of funny. So when we're thinking about the phases of EFFT, right, we have our core phases from the EFT model, right, de-escalation, connection, and bringing that into our family therapy work, bringing in, this is where that introduction in, so attachment-centered play therapy, it follows this closely and it's different at the same time. So our first stage is assessing for attachment needs. And what is the attachment need of the family, like of the system? And so part of that is we're playing detective, right? When it's like, hey, what are the attachment needs of the individuals within the system, as well as what are the global attachment needs of the system, and how are they engaging with each other? And I think that when we think about family work in that way, it actually simplifies what we're doing. It's easy to get stuck in the smoke and mirrors of the problem, right? And then you're playing like whack-a-mole and trying to like fix the problem. But if we're not exploring and discovering what's feeding that, right, then you're always going to be in that whack-a-mole place. And so when we can identify what the attachment needs are, and then we build our treatment plan around that, it changes how we're working and how we're seeing the family system. And then within that, the next phase then is, I should know this off the top of my head here, but we're looking at how we can begin to repair communication and to build in communication. And we know that that's not just verbal, right? It is all the unspoken communication and messages that's happening. And again, we're being playful around this, right? And so we're discovering it because that can help bring some psychological distance to it and some feelings of protection and like lessen the vulnerability and risk taking, while also giving permission for our defense mechanisms to be lowered simultaneously because we're engaging in a playful process. And, and then really working on helping the caregiver to become a resource to the child. And so being able to hold their own story and to hold the child's story, and instead of being a source of stress, being a source of a resource, right? And that place where we can repair and rebuild and create security. And I think that the phases of EFFT blend beautifully into this. And I love how Dr. Johnson, has broken these down into like, all right, like, let's have some clear things that we're focusing on. And now, my goal for you then is to let that be a fluid process and a creative one and an expressive one. So the little ones, no matter how little or big they may be, feel like they have a place in it.
Oh my goodness, what a beautiful sentiment there, Claire. Thank you so much. It's really amazing to have you on the podcast and to hear about how your model's just slightly differently, but also so much infused with Sue and EFFT, and they can go hand in hand. And yeah, you're right. Those attachment needs and longings are exactly what we're speaking to and we're utilizing in the system. And you're talking about how to build your treatment plan directly out of that. But very much to bring in play, regardless of what age the child or adult is. I think I'm convinced that play is an attachment need, and there's never not a reason to bring some playfulness in. Thank you so much for speaking to us a bit about your model and your work and some of the interventions that you use.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Claire. I know I was kind of quiet on this particular episode. I just got to say, I was really blown away by your overview at the beginning of why play is such a need throughout the entire developmental lifespan. And you did such an excellent job explaining how that makes sense at each of the major developmental lifespan moments. And you just coalesced a whole bunch of conceptual stuff for me. And you made new connections for me in my brain. And I'm just like super appreciative that you were able to help me with that, because it was like super impactful for me. Clearly you're very brilliant and you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. I would love to have you come back again if you're up for it. I'd love to drill down some more on more specific stuff if you're game. But just thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks so much for this overview. And I already ordered your books, by the way. I can't wait to dive into them. I totally understand why Catherine went to your training in Utah recently. So I'm already a fan. You're a +1 already. So just to let you know, thank you so much for being here and for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an absolute joy. And I will be back anytime you want me to come. So.
Yay. Yay. All right. Thank you. Ciao.
Bye. That's it for today, folks. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again for our next journey.